Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is Lionel Ketchian, and I'm here with George Ortega. And we're here to talk about happiness, because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Today we're going to be talking about happiness and smiling. And with that, I give you Smiling George.
Okay, thank you, Lionel. Okay, let's start off the show with giving a bit of a history of smiling. Basically back, I think it was in the late 1800s, Darwin came up with this idea that, like, ordinarily we think that, like, something happens, right, and that causes us to smile or frown or something, and then we feel the emotion, right? Mm-hmm. He said the reverse could actually be true. He said that we could, like, smile or frown or show some kind of physical, facial expression, and that will induce the emotion, okay? So again, this was like back in the late 1800s, I think. And then back in the 1960s, a psychologist named Sylvan Tompkins reintroduced the idea within the psychological perspective, because for all that time it had been lost as a concept. You know, nobody had really followed up on it. Then, back in 1974, a psychologist from Clark University, James Laird, actually decided to put it to the test. So basically, he, you know, through various, it actually took about 20 years for the whole field of psychology to accept that, yes, our expressions can influence and motivate and induce our emotions, our feelings. And so Laird did these experiments, and even like with his colleagues, for example, like one way that they used to verify this was that they had people put pencils in their mouth, like between their teeth, right? And that would activate the smile muscles. They're called the zygomatic muscles, right? And so when these subjects did that, they experienced the same positive effects as people who ordinarily smile do, right? So so they proved it quite convincingly that as we smile, we become happier. So you know, so the idea is that, like, smiling is such a powerful way to become happier. I mean, it's like, it's biological. It's so simple. And it's also kind of like, you know, like we have habits. We have our habitual ways of doing things. We have a habit of like how we our posture, you know, how we carry ourselves and all. And smiling can be a habit also. That's the thing. Like if you go down any street, many people have a kind of like a non-committal look, a closed look, you know, not a friendly, open facial, you know, pleasant expression. And so the idea is that, you know, many of us aren't really utilizing the smile as much as we can.
Yeah, you're right, George. And I know, you know, the old saying, you know, at least when I was growing up, everybody was saying, oh, you know, keep your back straight. Your mother always said, keep your back straight. You know, it was like, it got to be a joke, but the funny thing is, when you keep your back straight, when you sit up, you know, in the chair and you feel, you know, you're not slumping over, you feel erect, you actually change your state of being. You experience a little bit more powerful, maybe more, you know, with it type of control, and that's really what you're talking about with smiling, because at least, you know, I think that a few things are happening here. I think that one, when you're smiling, you're doing something that is, you're in control. You know, it's almost like you turn the wheel of the a ship, a plane, or a car, you know, one way, the whole vehicle is going to turn that way. And I think that in a sense, smiling could be called the steering wheel of happiness, because it is a precursor to how you're going to feel, and it's a good feeling. And I know that when you're smiling, it's very hard to think desperate or unhappy thoughts. It really is. They just don't go, there's no space for it. It just doesn't feel right. So there's a lot to smiling. There really, really is. And I think you're onto something when we make a whole show about smiling. I think that's a wonderful thing, because if people have nothing else that they can do in this moment, they could smile. And I always like to say, smile for no reason, because then you have no reason to stop smiling.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
And it doesn't have to be the broad, full smile with all teeth showing and all.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a simple, pleasant expression.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you were saying before, it's kind of like a reminder. We smile, and it reminds us of what life is about.
Yeah.
It's a continual reminder. I think it's also like, we were talking about this before, it can actually become a kind of conditioned response.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a person smiles, they feel happier, and so that, that will become habitual, and that'll become conditioned, so that each time they smile, they'll feel happier.
Yeah, it might just be if you're going to move into a room and sit there for a few minutes, whether it's a living room or somebody's room. You're not going to sit there in the darkness. You can't even find the furniture in the dark. So you're going to turn the light on and then into the room. In the same way, our minds are like turning a light on. And if you're smiling, you're in a brighter place, so to speak. So think of it as the light switch. You're just turning it on to get a better feeling for where you're living at that moment. And I think that you're going to experience better things as a result of smiling. I mean, and you don't have to do this intellectually. You just do it. You just do it and see how it feels. You experience it.
Oh, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a caveat to this.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 1984, James Laird had been studying smiling for about 10 years at that time, and what he discovered is this smiling effect works naturally and automatically for about half of the population. He referred to them as inner cue responders, I think, whereas where the people that it doesn't work for are called outer cue responders. For those people, for example, they'll feel happier, let's say, going to a party or going to a wedding, being involved in external activities that are supposed to be happy occasions. Okay, that's what will make them happy. But, I have to say also that Laird, during one of his papers, said that, it does seem to be a learned response, so that if you begin to try to smile and it doesn't initially feel as pleasant as you think it might, you just continue smiling. It's like any skill. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and the effects will become stronger and stronger.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing you do with smiling is, we talked about it like a steering wheel of happiness, but it's also a direction. When you're not smiling, you may really not be focused at all on anything, or maybe you're focused on something negative and you're feeling bad, and you're not even aware that you're feeling bad. You just all of a sudden you say, "Oh, I'm down in the dumps. I'm thinking negatively. I'm in a slump." But smiling redirects your thinking. That's another thing it does. I mean, and there's nothing more powerful than having an effect on our thinking. And I think smiling can do that. And usually we think we have to have a reason to be happy when we don't. I mean, I wish people could understand that concept, because it's a difficult one. This doesn't make you happy. It may make you smile and then you'll lose it. But if you just smile for no good reason, I think there's a book out by that title, Smile for No Good Reason. And in fact, I think Gerald Jampolsky, who's a psychiatrist, who's written many books, his son wrote the book, I believe, Smile for No Good Reason. And it's true, if you learn to smile for no good reason, then you are controlling your life. And that's the whole point of happiness.
Okay, and what happens also is not only do you control your life, you begin to more and more influence the lives of those around you. Because, I mean, like, as we smile, others see that. And, like, they've done research on this, actually. They've shown photographs of people smiling to different subjects. And the people who are smiling are generally judged as more intelligent, friendlier, more ethical, So, I mean, like, And of course, then there's like the emotion contagion effect. I mean,
yes.
Oh yeah, if you're smiling, you're going to bring happiness to those around you.
Yeah. George, I like to think of happiness as being causative, where when you walk into a room, if you're happy, you cause something to happen, something positive to happen. Now, maybe that's not so esoteric and metaphysical and mystical when you think that if you walk into the room and you see a guy, standing in the room with a big fat scowl on his face, you're not immediately drawn to that person. In fact, you start to, you have a lot of resistance to that person. Like, what is he going to say to me? What is he going to do? Is he going to be obnoxious? But if you see somebody enter the room and they're smiling and they're in a good, they have a nice countenance, they seem friendly and happy, and like you say, the smile is friendliness. You're more apt to be friendly to that person and maybe develop a relationship with that person or begin to talk with them or treat them in a respectful manner, for example. Now that's a real benefit to having a smile, which we never think of, because it's not only good for us, but it's good for the other person, and then in turn it's good for us again because we're telling the other person how to treat us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And a smile is so powerful, Lionel, that it doesn't have to be even seen by the other person to have an effect. I mean, like, this is something they've done research on, and they actually use this as a selling yeah,
on
you know
the
about
telephone.
this.
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
Sales programs, telemarketers, they're pretty much advised and instructed to smile, while they're on their phone with other people, because even though the other person is not seeing the person smile, that, smiling changes the person who's smiling's, I guess, tonal qualities and his whole mood, and that comes across, without the person seeing it.
I just had an experience like that. Yeah, they say that you can actually tell, you could try it with somebody. If you smile without them knowing it, the smile comes across in tonality, tempo, the voice, and so forth. I had an incident where I was calling a company and I was overcharged on something that, I wasn't really angry, but, I figured I'd just handle it from a very quiet nature. And as soon as the person looked up the account and saw what I was supposed to be billed and what I was billed, they started to laugh. And they said, "You know what? This is funny. You're 100% right. You've been misbilled." That laughter actually made me feel great, because it wasn't like, she showed me that I don't have anything to worry about. She understands my problem. She in fact, by making it on her end something to laugh at, that it was a complete error and it's blatantly wrong, she made me feel better. Her laughter actually was the best thing in the world she could have done to make me feel better. And she wasn't doing it on purpose. She just did it naturally, Now, I don't know if my tone of voice on the phone, helped her be like that. Now, if I had gotten on the phone and was very angry, she probably wouldn't be doing much laughing, and maybe the two of us would get each other worked up the wrong way.
Oh yeah, so yes, smiling, I mean, again, it's a way to set things in the right direction. Oh yeah, to move things in, in the positive. You just did a presentation on making the happiness decision as a very simple and very powerful way to become much happier and to stay happier. Okay, with smiling, I presented a show a while back. We did a show on the Ortega Happiness Method where, there are 4 components, and I included smiling in that method because it's simple. It's very simple. It's biological. It can become habitual. I also included it on another happiness method that we presented recently, the Bliss Mantra Method, because the Ortega Happiness Method had 4 components. I think it was valuing happiness, and I guess that's with, valuing happiness with any way that you attempt to become happier, that has to be a part of it, because that has to be, serve as the motivation to do the work and all. But then the other component was to kind of to take control of our minds. And basically, the show you did on happiness as a decision was about that. It was about that, we don't have to just think whatever comes into our minds. We can choose to think positive thoughts, pleasant, happy thoughts all the time. All right, so I included the smiling in the Bliss Mantra Method, which is only 2 components. Meditating on the word bliss, saying it over and over silently, and smiling. Smiling, I think, you could, whether it's making the happiness decision, meditating, do whatever other kind of happiness increase method you use. If we smile along with it, it will just amplify the effect. I mean, it makes it that much more powerful.
Yes, you're right. I kind of feel that people use happiness as a strategy because, one, they've been conditioned into it, and number 2, I think there's some sort of a payoff. They figure they can influence people more by being unhappy than they can being happy. But actually, the truth is that there aren't enough happy people to prove that happiness works better. There just isn't enough, data collected on it. But a happier person is actually more powerful than an unhappy person, just by that state. Because unhappy people are actually acting helpless. And they have to get angry to overcompensate for their helplessness.
Right. It's interesting, Lionel, because you mentioned that there isn't that much data on like the benefits of becoming happier, or how it responding to life through happiness is more effective than through less happiness. There is beginning to be a body of research that's emerging.
Yes.
And it's showing that, as we become happier, if we respond to life through happiness, we're going to become emotionally healthier, physically healthier, we're going to become richer, we're going to have more friends, our friendships. And again, it starts as easily as smiling. We talk about different happiness methods. Certainly, if one decides to be happy and maintains that decision throughout one's life, one is going to be happy, period.
Absolutely.
And I think if one decides to, and this is hard because I work with this, and it's hard to smile, throughout one's day, every day and all, but it has its payoff. So if one wanted to become much happier simply by smiling and doing nothing else, it would definitely work.
I agree. There's a new book out by actually a favorite minister that I hear on TV. He's out in Texas. He's on all the channels on Sunday. His name is Joel Osteen, and he took over the Lakewood Church. It's one of the biggest churches in the country. Normally I don't talk about Christian churches, but Joel Osteen is a minister who talks about happiness incessantly in his preaching, and he's incredible because he just wrote a book, and I bought it. And the seventh and last chapter, or the seventh last step in his book on how to lead I think it's some sort of a positive life or something like that, is about choose to be happy. He's very big on happiness. And I haven't read his book yet, but I just bought it. And one of the things I noticed in that chapter is smiling. I haven't even read it yet, but I've heard him talk about smiling as, as a very, very big part of happiness. But also there's another aspect of happiness that I don't think is talked about enough. Happiness is self-confidence. Happiness is responsibility. And when you smile, you're becoming responsible for yourself. And helplessness is, in a sense, being irresponsible, or more so, allowing a feeling of helplessness to come over you. And how do you get helpless? By feeling as if you have no control over anything in your life. If you can control smiling, that alone could help you overcome helplessness, because you can't really feel helpless when you're smiling. And unfortunately, unhappy people are not going to smile because they don't want to get out of that state. It's as simple as that.
Right. And it's interesting because there are happy people in every one of our lives. Whether we're happy or not, we know of people in our lives who are happy, who are very happy, right? And in general, there's two ways that we know. One is because happy people tend to complain less, or if they complain, it's enjoyable. The thoughts they express are much more positive. They're not going to go to negative places. They're going to, what they say is going to be pleasant. And the second way is that they look happier. Okay. Now you got to ask yourself, what does looking happier look like? It's nothing more complicated than simply maintaining a pleasant countenance, which is nothing more complicated than smiling. I mean, basically the essence, when we see a happy person, the people in our lives, that's what they're doing more than the less happy people. They're simply smiling.
Well, how can we... If you're not smiling, at least you're not walking around with a frown. Can we?
Oh yeah, no. We've got to make something clear, Lionel. You're very right in this. One can be extremely happy without smiling at all. We don't want to at all say that smiling is necessary to either happiness or great happiness. But it's just like a very, very potent strategy.
Well, I like the aspect of smile for one good reason. It makes you present. It makes you realize that you're here now. If you're smiling, you're really not, somewhere else. You're more clearly in the present because you're controlling your smile. And to control something, you have to be conscious. And I think it's like a wake-up call. It's like a physical alarm clock to bring you back into this state that you're choosing to be in. And I like it for that reason. I think it's a great wake-up call to you to alert yourself to feel, hey, here we are. Why not be happy?
Yeah, you just reminded me of something. I was surfing the net several years ago, and I came upon this article that was, this was something I actually heard on the radio. I surfed for the net, on the net for it, but I couldn't find it. But I heard on the radio a few years ago that there was a town in Italy where, this is like awesome, the mayor created a law that like no one could be out in public without a pleasant facial expression, that it was against the law in that town to like walk around, dissatisfied with a dissatisfied expression. Now, I'm not sure that would work in America, right? Because we tend to like want to be free, and if we want to be grouchy and grumpy, we want to have the power to do that. But I'm bringing it up because like, there are ways that people could be kind of like encouraged to smile through education, through government, through the media.
Well, all we have to do is just put up, road signs, smiling required ahead. And you have the right to smile. If you don't smile, you're going to be taken away in handcuffs. That's all.
Okay, let's see. Again, we mentioned about the aspect of smiling, that it can be habitual, and that's important because like with posture, and they've also found, they did studies on posture, and they also found that when we sit up and walk upright, our mood increases. I mean, that's as clear as a smiling correlation. So that, the idea is that since smiling is something like posture that can become habitual, that it can like form our basic countenance, that's why we should like just smile a lot, smile often, smile as continuously as possible so that we create that habit. In my personal life, I've been working on this for a while, and I don't know if it's like something that's very difficult that I'm not personally that good at. I sometimes have to remind myself to smile, especially like if I'm talking sometimes or involved in some kind of like work. But, I think theoretically, in principle, once one continually smiles for a certain amount of time, that behavior, like all behaviors in general, will become habitual.
Yeah, and another good thing about smiling, George, is it helps us overcome, we're talking about, habitual things, conditioning, our past. We live years and years and years of our lives maybe unhappy or maybe, in different ways, maybe with a lot of regret and other things. But that conditioning, carries along like a giant tidal wave. And happiness and smiling to show that we're happy can help break that, interrupt that at least. And even if we have interruptions along the way and we're not perfect at it, that's enough. That's a good step.
Oh, yeah.
It really is.
Okay, I'm thinking again about like, presenting smiling and all. And like, I think, we've got to deal with one point, that happiness can be kind of like achieved and expressed in ethical and unethical ways. For example, like if we derive our happiness at the expense of others, that's not good. That we never recommend that, and that's just something that no one should do. And I think with smiling also, there are ways of smiling that are kind of derisive. They're kind of not good. They're not good smiles. They're not like genuine, friendly, kind smiles, and so like sometimes we'll tend to do that. We might want to mock another person or something. So we've just got to state that just as happiness can be ethical and unethical, so can smiling. So we want to just like keep our smiles positive, keep our smiles about what's good and what's going to help others become even happier.
Interesting. Another aspect you mentioned earlier about state, this physical state, psychological state, and I think smiling is like a behavior. And you mentioned earlier that smiling can affect mood and feeling, which is so true. And And it can even go further back than that and affect thinking. So you have thinking that could make you feel bad, feel unhappy, feel in a bad mood, and act badly, behave badly. But you could reverse that whole trend. You could smile. You could get yourself in a better mood, in a good mood even, feeling good. And then your thinking, it's a chain. So the smiling affects your entire state, your physical state, sitting up, like we said, your mental state, your psychological state. Everything is affected in a more positive way, and you're controlling it. I mean, isn't it wonderful that we have a mechanism like that available to us, that we could turn it on and off like a light switch?
Oh yeah, and then I was just thinking, like, sometimes, like, if we need reminders to smile, we've got these smileys, right?
Yes.
These smileys are awesome. Now, you can find these smileys like as stickers in a lot of like card shops, in dollar
Everywhere.
stores. There's a website, I think smileys.com.
Yes.
So I mean, put these things around our house, in our car, and all. Every time we look at them, there'll be reminders to smile, and there'll be reminders to be very happy.
Yeah, it's true, and I think we need those reminders most of all, because it may sound good. People are watching the program, they get psyched up, they say, look, it makes sense. Being happy is a whole lot better than being unhappy, but you forget. Again, it's that conditioning. We need to reinforce this, and I think the notes or smiley faces is a great idea. I think we need to remind ourselves every chance we get, whether it's reading material that can put us in a better state or whatever it is we can come up with.
Yeah, I just, there are actually some stores, I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of stores that I shop in, the plastic shopping bags that they give out now, a lot of them have smileys.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. It's kind of like the smiley thing. I mean, I don't know how long it's been around. It's probably been around. When I was in camp, okay, my mom used to write me letters, and at the very end she would write "Love, Mom" or something, and draw a little smiling. This was
really?
like back in the '60s. So I think the smiley thing has been around a lot, and the more it's around everywhere, the better for all of us.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. I mean, I think smiling is essential. I think we've certainly proved. Is there any other things you can give the audience in a wrap-up?
Just smile often, smile constantly. I mean, smiling, it's so easy that we should do it all the time.
Yeah, that's great. That's good advice, and I think a smile is something that could benefit you, and look at what it could do for your family. I mean, at least you want your family to be happy. How about a smile so you can all do it? Well, we thank you very much for tuning in. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics that are designed to help us all enjoy life more. Be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join us again next week on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.